I'm extremely excited for today's conversation. I have got an incredible guest, Emma Mumford, on. Welcome to the No Sugarcoating Podcast.
Oh, thank you, Amber, so much for having me. Like, it was such a joy interviewing you on my podcast. So I'm so glad we get to chat again.
Oh, me too. And I just feel like there's just so many similarities with what we talked about on your episode, on your podcast, and just the manifestation piece. To me, the law of attraction is just like, it's everything. And I know as I grew up, I had no idea about it. And then as I healed, I woke up to all of it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, we're creating our realities. We are what? Okay, I have a lot of power here. I better be mindful of what I focus my energy on. So I'm so excited to, first off, have you share a little bit about your journey and how it evolved to get to this point where, right, like you've owned in on your gifts and you're sharing them with the world. So why don't you share a bit about your journey to what brought you to this point?
Yeah, so we go back all the way to 2012 really. But just like kind of even like before that, as a little bit of backstory, I definitely wouldn't have said I was spiritual like growing up and in my teenage years. So really the law of attraction and spirituality is something definitely I've embodied in my adult life, rather than being someone who's like always been spiritual or had lots of spiritual experiences around me. I definitely was not that child. That definitely was not my upbringing or my experiences. But back in 2012, when I was sort of like 18, 19 years old, that's when my kind of story and journey really, took center stage as such. So I was working as a banking manager at the time. I did not want to be a banker. That was not in the career path whatsoever. When I was at school and things, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted my own business like my dad. But I had no idea in what. Everyone's like, you have to invent a product, you have to create something. And I was like, I've got no idea. So that desire was definitely always there. But, I obviously went and got a job and then sort of just fell into these roles as such very quickly. So ended up becoming a banking manager at a very young age, which I definitely felt totally underqualified for. I did not even have a maths GCSE. I could not tell you how I even got that role, but I knew I was good at sales. I knew I was good at working with people. My previous jobs had really taught me that. So I was in my first not so great relationship at that point, and we had started to get bailiffs knocking at the door. And this was obviously so, a lot for an 18, 19-year-old to sort of deal with. He was a lot older than me, the boyfriend. And I was like, what do we do? Like, I've never experienced this. You're not really taught how to deal with debt in school or like any of these, adult human things that happen. So it was a real big learning curve for me. So put my Virgo hat on and I was like, right, okay, I get preferential rates at the bank. Why don't I take out a loan to cover this £7,000 debt they're wanting? And then you can pay it off. And then it's going to be a much easier, percentage rate to pay off and easier for all of us. So I did that. And then the relationship broke down very quickly after me doing that. £7,000 very quickly turned into £30,000 worth of debt they were chasing. And it just kept coming. That's what I was aware of. The full scale of it, I don't think I will ever know. But, when I left, when we broke up, that was the kind of 30,000 was the figure I knew at that point. So it was obviously like, wow, this person has completely hidden this from me, completely lied.
Yeah.
Do I even know this person anymore? And at this point, my anxiety and depression that I'd had for quite a while really, really heightened, because I not only then had £7,000 worth of debt in my name, my responsibility, that he still to this day has not paid a penny of. And I was so young at this point, and then going into work each day, putting people in debt as well. It was a catalyst for destruction for me, really. So I felt really, really depressed. I got to a point where I couldn't barely leave the house. And obviously at this point, I then had to leave my banking job because I couldn't even turn up to work without panic attacks and crying in the bathroom. So it just obviously was not, a sustainable career that I could continue with in my current state. So I went and took a part-time retail job just to take the pressure off myself. And that felt so much better in itself. But I then had to find a way to pay off this debt and, somehow get through these mental health issues that I was having, because there wasn't great support, here in 2012 in the UK. It wasn't a massive thing that was spoken about mental health or depression and anxiety. And I also didn't have the money to pay for private sessions either. So I had to rely on the NHS and rely on referrals, which were awful at the time. Like, there just was not the help. So I then found extreme couponing, which was totally random and totally thanks to the US show. And I thought like, wow, like all these Americans, you know, they're saving so much money and like getting thousands of dollars worth of food and products for free. Like imagine if I could do that and what pressure that would take off me. And actually that would really help me clear this debt so much quicker, especially on a part-time income. So I feel like it was an escapism for me, couponing. It definitely felt like something that I could just put all this positive energy into. And it was a bit like a savior for me in some ways, that I was able to do something positive. And, you know, it would get me out the house. It would get me into supermarkets. It would get me feeling more positive about my finances. So 6 months in, my friends were like, Emma, you have a whole stockpile, like a whole room of stuff. You're saving like hundreds of pounds every month. This is insane. Like you have to share this with people. And at first I was like, but who am I? You know, we've got big money saving experts here in the UK. I was like, who am I to talk about this? You know, I'm Emma, for God's sake. So they very positively persuaded me into doing it, which I'm so glad they did, because, you know, it is true that people do want to learn how to couponing. And here at the time in the UK, couponing was not on the map. Like barely anybody was doing it. It was very taboo. Like it wasn't very well accepted. So within 6 months of that point, I had 500,000 followers on my Facebook page that I'd created. The press had nicknamed me Coupon Queen. I was going on national TV here in the UK presenting money saving slots. It got very wild very quickly. And, you know, I was just thrust into this. This was never a plan. I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to deal with any of these things. So it was like a very amazing and incredible time of my life. But equally, I still had this crippling depression there. I still had these mental health issues and still didn't love myself and still didn't feel great. So I think from the outside, people would look at all that success and be like, wow, like what's Emma got to be sad about? But there was still all this trauma underneath the surface, resurfacing throughout that. So that's when I got into my second not very great relationship. And then fast forward to 2016, I'd run that business for a few years. It went from strength to strength. And this is when I had my spiritual awakening in 2016. And really at this point, I was like rock bottom, like the depression had spiraled even further. I was again in a toxic relationship. I was being toxic as well. It was just all spiraling into this like abyss as such. And that was when I really thought, you know, I'm either going to have to change my life or take my life. And I knew I didn't want to take my life. I knew that wasn't like my path or what I wanted to do. So I thought, like, how do people love themselves? Like, we're never taught this. Like, how do I love myself? How on earth do I become happy? How do other people do it? And that's when the law of attraction found me at the end of that breakdown of that relationship. You know, I was at this like, I give up kind of state with the universe and with myself. And that's when this word law of attraction kept finding me. And I thought, like, what is this? And I thought, attraction, is it like a relationship or something? Like, what is the law of attraction? And then I kept seeing these videos and kept seeing just like The Secret and just things like, you know, popping up. And so I read The Secret, and then I obviously watched The Secret on Netflix, and it was like a remembering. It wasn't like I was learning anything new or like, what is this? It was like, oh, of course that's how life works. Yes, of course that makes sense. So I feel like a lot of people see it as a remembering rather than like this new skill that we pick up in life as such. Maybe not everybody, but definitely that was my experience. And really from there, again, just like the couponing, it was really that like positive thing that I could just throw myself into. And I like almost like became obsessed with it, where I was, you know, like researching it, reading all the books I could, watching all the videos I could. And within like 3-4 weeks, you know, even that short amount of time, I'd managed to manifest and change so much in my life. And I remember, I think it was like week 3 or week 4 that I was doing The Magic by Rhonda Byrne. For the first time ever in like 8 years, I'd woken up and didn't feel anxiety in my stomach. And I thought like, wow, like this works. So I believe my depression personally was more circumstantial depression rather than a physical like chemical imbalance. So again, that's just my experience with this. That's not the same for everybody, because, you know, I tried medication, I tried CBT, I tried therapy, nothing was giving me long lasting results. And you know, my healing journey is definitely more longer than just to 2016, but essentially that's how I found it. And then I was incorporating it more into my YouTube, into my videos and stuff, and people were loving it. I thought people would think, hang on a minute, law of attraction, couponing, how do these fit? But people loved it. And you know, it was great that people could not only save money but manifest money as well. And then in 2017 I decided that I wanted to do this full time. and that this was something that I really wanted to involve in. And my business, my couponing business, had grown to huge heights at this point. So it needed a team of people. It had totally outgrown me. And I'd outgrown it a little bit as well. Not because I don't love money saving or couponing. Like, believe me, I still get excited every time I get a coupon. But for me, it was like I wanted to help people in a different way, where I could then teach them money in a manifestation sense and talk about other topics as well. So yeah, I've been doing this ever since 2017, and I manifested selling that business in 2018.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And it just goes to show you how things show up unexpectedly. Like this, none of this was in your plan. You did not plan in like 2010, I'm going to have a successful couponing business, and then I'm going to have a successful law of attraction. But like, you know what I mean? It was the same with me. I was like, I'm going to be an entertainment reporter, and that's going to be my life. And then boom, binge eating hits hard, go through the big dark night of the soul. And then it evolves into a business. Like, you're right. It's all about, we come back to ourselves. Like, and that's what, why we come to this planet, to really remember who we are. And we're these powerful souls, right? That, are not supposed to be in jobs we hate and having anxiety and depression, but sometimes going through those experiences helps to bring us back to who we really are. So I'm so glad that you created the reality and the life and the well-being that we all deserve to have, because it's not fun going through those, periods in your life where there is depression, anxiety. It's really heavy. So let's talk about the law of attraction. I feel like most people probably know what it is, but just in case anyone doesn't, what is it and how does it change our lives? Because it really does.
Good question. So the law of attraction is one of the 7 energetic laws of the universe. So the law of attraction is actually called the law of vibration in the 7 laws of the universe, but most people refer it to as the law of attraction or manifestation. So it's the notion that like attracts like. So the energy that we put out into the universe and how we're showing up to the big energetic mirror of the universe as such is what we experience in our reality, what we create into our reality. So as you said, like, we are the creator of our life. You are the artist, the author of your life as such. So it means that we can attract and manifest, anything into our life. So for instance, a great example of this is if you're having a bad day and you've gone and text someone and said, oh, I can't believe this has happened. And then you go and tell somebody else, and then something else annoying happens and you go and tell someone else. By the end of the day, you're like, oh my gosh, I have just had one of those days and I am doneth. This is the law of attraction in action, and vice versa. If something positive happens and we go and tell someone like, you will not believe what just happened, and then something else happens and you're like, oh my God. And then by the end of the day, you're like, wow, lucky things happen in 3, like, this is my day. This again is the law of attraction in action. So again, like, our words, our thoughts, our energy, it all creates our reality. And I think a lot of the time people just assume that the law of attraction, you can manifest like cars, houses, money, career, success, but you can manifest absolutely anything. You can manifest people into your life, loving relationships. You can manifest feelings and how you want to feel. You can manifest healing. Like, there is no limits. And I think sometimes we can really focus on the materialistic side of law of attraction. Right. But like, don't forget, you can manifest anything, feelings, emotions, like happy things, anything at all. So yeah, the law of attraction is incredible. And obviously, like, I don't just want to like speak from my perspective here because I'm a bit biased. I do teach it, but over the last 6 years, I have been able to manifest, pretty much everything off my original vision board. And of course, our goals and our dreams, evolve as we grow up and as we change. And I think as you go along the law of attraction journey, especially as you get into the inner work and things like that, that's when I really learned my biggest lessons with the law of attraction, which is why I created the 5 steps to law of attraction, because I didn't feel the original 3 of ask, believe, receive were extensive enough or really took you deep enough to understand the process. So some people can, manifest really easily and they're like, wow, like all these things are happening, which is great. And then maybe the bigger things that they want to manifest feel a bit harder, a bit more out of reach, and no matter what they're doing. So there's lots of common blocks that I see with the law of attraction, but it definitely is fun to do, and you can change your life in so many incredible ways. If you're looking at your life now and you're like, gosh, I just really wish that I could be there, or I just really wish I could have that in my life. Like, you can absolutely work with the law of attraction to manifest that thing in your life.
Yeah, totally. And so something that I started doing when I first started learning about this is I'm like, oh, my thoughts create my reality. I better never think anything negative because it'll all come true. And like, there's this paranoia I had about like having to think perfectly and feel perfectly to not attract what I didn't want. And obviously it's not that extreme because we're all human. Sometimes we have a negative thought or a limiting belief pop up, right? To heal, work through, feel, whatever it is. And nothing bad happens when I have that come up. So for people who might be like, oh my gosh, like if my thoughts create my reality and I'm in negative, like what do you do with that paranoia if that's starting to come up for you, if you're starting to get into this?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you did bring this up because it's so important. And I feel like if I could just literally teach one thing, it would be like this of like, we do not live in a world of instantaneous manifestation. Thank God. Like, thank God
Yeah.
we don't. Otherwise, there'll be like pink elephants and everything everywhere. And I think, you know, with especially old school teachings, like I was exactly the same as you, Amber. Like I was sat there like, oh my God, like I better not think any negative thoughts. Like this is going to manifest. Oh my God, I'm to blame for everything in my life right now. And I think, you know, yes, to some degree, you can look at your
Right.
past experiences and be like, okay, how did I contribute to them? Like I can look at my previous relationships and be like, okay, because of the childhood trauma that I didn't know I had at that point,
Right.
yes, I can see how I've then taken those beliefs and taken those thought patterns. And then that's manifested into those relationships. And then I've also contributed to that too. So yes, you can take responsibility in those senses. But do I believe that, you know, horrific things that happen to people, oh, you manifested it? Absolutely not. Life is more complex than that. It's not as black as white as that. I believe we have soul contracts and things that we come down here to fulfill and to experience, to embody the lessons that we have chosen to learn in this lifetime. So life happens in weird and wonderful ways sometimes. And I think, you know, we have to remember the law of attraction is one energetic law. One. It's not the be all and end all. It's one. So when you look at the whole scale of things and, you know, look at spirituality as a whole, I just don't think that notion of, you know, you can't think bad thoughts is relevant because, you know, and I say it all the time, like I'm a Virgo, so it's like in our DNA to literally like worst case scenario, everything. Do those things happen? No, 9 times out of 10, they don't. And I think, God, Emma, you sat there worrying about that thing for hours and didn't even happen. So you're right. As humans, we are wired to sometimes have those negative thoughts and have those limiting beliefs. And I remember when this really like hit a peak in my manifestation journey for me was I was in my local supermarket doing some shopping and I was walking around and I had this particular pesky limiting belief coming up and this thought. And I'd had it for a few days and I was just like doing all the, you know, tricks of like ignore, happy thoughts, gratitude, like all the things the old teachers said. And I was walking around Waitrose and I was sat there like, oh my God, like, can you just stop? I'm trying to buy my groceries, like just stop. And it was getting louder and louder and louder. So when I got home, I was like totally peed off at this point. I was like at my absolute limit, like, why universe? Why are these thoughts plaguing me? And instead of fighting it, instead of swearing at it, instead of bashing it and suppressing it, I thought, right, for God's sake, this isn't going anywhere. So I'm just going to talk to it. And I was like, right, what is up? I hear you. I see you. What the heck is going on? Why are you doing this to me? And then instantly the power went. And I was like, huh? And all that power, all that focus, all that intensity that had been there for days just went. And I was like, okay, this is new. What's this? And when I spoke to it, I heard this little voice of, I'm worried because I don't feel enough. And I thought, whoa, where's this? And this is how I met my inner child and really went along that journey of understanding that the inner critic and ego is our inner child there trying to communicate with us and trying to get through. So I learned very quickly that actually by talking to that inner critic and ego and talking to those negative thoughts and beliefs that come up, that actually you get to the root of it and it instantly loses the power when we look at it, when we talk to it, when we give it love. So I think definitely there is so much stuff in old school teachings that I think we just need to like bin off and like rewrite again or start again with, because it is like, I remember that anxiety, that paranoia, like you say, of like, oh my God, I can't think that. And it's like, and actually even today I had a DM from someone saying that like, Emma, do I take my relationship off my vision board? I'm so worried if I do, then it, you know, all the good stuff I've manifested will go. And it's like, there's so like the law of attraction shouldn't create fear in us. It shouldn't create paranoia or fear. And I'm always like, trust yourself more. But what's meant for you is never going to pass you by. And I think when we really embody into that more, you can relax into the manifestation, into the law of attraction, instead of it feeling like this, okay, amazing and positive thing, but like, at the same time, like it doesn't need to feel like that.
Totally. Thank you for talking about this, because just I feel like it's so common when we dive into these kinds of things for the paranoia to come up. And you're right, like it's not supposed to make us fearful or paranoid, and that's kicking up our ego and our inner child. And I'm glad you brought that up, because they're doing that inner child work and connecting with her is so powerful. And don't you love how what you resist persists, and as soon as you stop and you talk to it and you hear it out, it just falls away and you do take your power back? Like how we resist like so much, and then we wonder why things get bigger and louder and more intense, and then we get exhausted because we're resisting looking at, feeling, addressing something, facing something, when look at what happens when we do that, right? So it's powerful. I would love to talk a little bit about soul contracts, because I totally agree. I think that we as a soul come down here with all kinds of things that we want to try. And this is kind of like the life buffet. Like, what do I want to put on my plate this time, right? But tell me a little bit about that, because I love hearing everyone's different perspective. And then I know we have certain things that we plan in our contract. Do you think because of like awakening to our soul and like remembering who we really are, that it all will alter the course of what is in our soul contract? Or do you think it's just like fully set up, set in stone, and it's going to unfold exactly as it was planned?
And I think a really good question too, that is, I get asked that a lot of, you know, if we have soul contracts, Emma, what's the point of manifesting things? Because if everything's always determined and like always set out in stone, what the heck is the point of us doing all of this? Which is a fair enough question. And I've absolutely asked it myself. And, you know, I'm definitely no soul contract expert by any means. Like I'm definitely a novice and a learner, as we all are. And, you know, I think from deepening my spiritual, like learning over the years, reading some great books, like I've really come to understand it more. And I think, you know, very much when I was on my law of attraction manifesting journey, like over the last 6 years, it was very focused on that. Like I didn't really have at that time an awareness of spiritual concepts or, you know, the whole scale, the whole picture. And it was some great friends that would, you know, say to me, like, you've got to learn how to let go and surrender. You've got to really embody the other spiritual aspects and spiritual principles. And, you know, like to give you a really good example of this, I manifested a relationship into my life in 2017. And, you know, like it ticked every box of this dream relationship that I had been manifesting. Little did I know that that was a big karmic relationship, a big soul blooming contract that had came in to put me on my healing path. And obviously looking back, you know, from a manifestation point of view, I know that people would be like, well, did you manifest that relationship then? Did you manifest that love? But, you know, I believe that if people are setting intentions of like manifesting husbands as I was, or manifesting whatever, you know, you've got to be prepared to do the work as well. And you've got to be prepared to manifest the things that are going to get you to that. And I really do believe that relationship specifically was that karmic contract for me to deal with the inner work. Like, oh boy, I was not ready for any form of commitment at that point, but I thought I was. But that relationship came in and taught me that lesson. Oh boy, it did. And it was hard. And, you know, I had another dark night of the soul. I went through my hurt, healing, healed journey where my childhood trauma came up. I learned what healing was. I learned what limiting beliefs and fears was. It was a very heavy journey to walk along, but I am so grateful for that relationship because it taught me everything I know now. It's allowed me to be the version of myself I am now and have the happiness and abundance I have because I've cleared those blocks. I've cleared that resistance. I've cleared that heavy density that I had, which was like sitting under the surface and contributing to those manifestations and manifesting those things that weren't quite aligned. So it's a really different, I'm always like, you know, what comes first, the chicken or the egg with this? And it's like,
Right.
are we ever going to know the full complexities of how the universe works? Probably not. Otherwise, what the heck would be the point of us coming down here and learning everything? So I think you've almost like got to be a student of life with it and have an openness of, okay, if that resonates with me, great. If it doesn't, then, you know, chuck it away and find what does resonate with you. But I think in terms of like soul contracts and things, like, I think, you know, from my experience and what I kind of resonate with from what I've read and, you know, heard from teachers and things, is that there are like those core things in our path of like, you know, I was meant to like spiritually awaken at that age. I was meant to meet this partner. I was meant to get into debt, to like go to my first business and then have this spiritual awakening. Like, I believe those things absolutely were like predestined. But, you know, in terms of how that translates into our life, you know, I definitely believe we have free will choice. I don't believe we're just sat here, you know, with no choice whatsoever. I've seen it in people's lives where I felt so clearly that like, oh my God, like that's going to happen. And like multiple people have said it with me. And then that person makes like a total different decision. And then their life looks totally different. And even they're like, wow, I feel like that was like a sliding doors moment where I could have gone one way and actually I've gone another way. So I think I definitely believe in like those sliding door moments. I believe in free will. And I think, you know, our soul knows what it's doing at the end of the day. We know what we're doing. And like you said, it's all about like reclaiming that power, standing in your power and using your discernment for what is for your highest good. So yeah, absolutely. I believe we can manifest things. I believe that we have the free will choice to call those things in. But, you know, for instance, like I always use my book publishers as a good example of this, because sometimes we don't always know what's best for us, but we think we do, like I did with that relationship. And, you know, like I always had like a fixed vision of like, I want to be published by that publisher. And then when that opportunity came up, I saw firsthand how I did not want to be published by that publisher. And that was not what was right for me or my book at all. And I could have sold my soul. I could have changed myself. I could have done all these things, but was that authentic to me? No. Did that feel good? No. So actually I ended up with a publisher that was way more aligned, with more money, ironically, and so many better opportunities. And now I'm like, thank God I didn't do that. Thank God I didn't get that manifestation. So I think definitely like as much as we want something, we can manifest that opportunity. And I've had definitely a lot of those experiences where I've realized, I think I dodged a bullet there.
Right. Totally. I can totally relate. And it's your intuition. Like if you're really tapped into your light and your intuition, you're not going to like take on those kinds of manifestations because it's just so out of alignment, like you said. So I love that. Yeah, you have certain assumptions, but then it's really tuning into like what feels expansive, what feels in alignment, what's the yes versus, you know, what the mind makes up. It's a completely different feeling, right? And it creates a completely different reality when we feel and tune in versus analytically go, oh, well, this one. And it's like, yeah, like you said, you dodged a bullet. So tell me, like, where should people get started with this? Or like, what would be a couple of steps that people can take to dip their toe in to start exploring law of attraction? And maybe if they already know what it is, like what would be some maybe like moderate level steps that they could take?
And I feel like we've gone pretty deep with this podcast. Like
we could go so
backtrack
much
it a little bit. How long have we got? But no, I think like, you know, obviously we've spoken about quite deep topics within this. So obviously like the law of attraction is much lighter to get into and obviously start off with. You don't have to go as deep as what me and Amber have spoken about. But yeah, I would really suggest actually on my YouTube channel, I've got my 5 steps to the law of attraction. So you can go and watch those videos and learn why I think there's extra steps, what those extra steps are, and obviously like the how to of like how to get started. But it is really simple. Yes, okay, you could get positively wealthy in my book. It's a 33-day fun manifesting challenge. So if you want something a bit more guided, you want something, you know, more structured and something to do, then yeah, things like that are great to get started with. But simply, you know, you just need to start setting intentions. It's as simple as that. Like, yes, learn the steps, get clear on how the law of attraction works. And I've got oodles of content for you on that. But yeah, set intentions. And I love doing this monthly. So even if you just sit there today and you're like, okay, where am I now and where would I really love to be? Like, what does that look like? Maybe start off with a vision board, maybe start off with a goals list. We're coming up to 2023, so the perfect time to start setting those goals for the new year, for the year ahead. So maybe it's even starting off with that and looking at and maybe reflecting, like, what do you feel worked really well this year? What do you feel didn't work so well for you? And then thinking like, okay, with that clarity, what do I want to cultivate in 2023? What does that look like? So maybe even something as simple as that, as we wrap up this year, could be really great to get you started with the law of attraction. But knowing those steps, I would say, is the important part first of all.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm so excited for people to check out your YouTube and your book and your podcast too, which is amazing. And all of the content that you have to offer, sharing all of these wisdom and gifts that are going to assist with more people, stepping into this and seeing how powerful it is and how much it works, and that we all get to create our reality and we get to choose. And I think it's always so uplifting to know, like, we have the power. It's up to us. So is there anything else you want to share with the audience today before we wrap up? I feel like we might have to do a part 2, and there's some other things that have piqued my interest since we've been talking, but yeah.
Well, I'm definitely here for that. But yeah, I think final things I would share is just to take it slow. Like, there's lots of information out there with the law of attraction. And I think the number one thing, like, people come to me with is just feeling overwhelmed of like my one-to-one clients, for example, they come with this whole list of things they're doing. And I'm like, gosh, I feel overwhelmed just by you listing them to me. So start off small, take it step by step. Creating like a daily practice, for example, is really, really great to start raising your vibration and just to see the law of attraction in action without necessarily, like, once you set the intentions, you've got to start doing the steps, doing the work as such. So it's not enough to just sort of like set the intentions and put them away like you could, but equally you've got to move along those steps. So a daily practice is like a really simple tip, but so effective. It has so many benefits. It doesn't have to be a spiritual daily practice. It can just be a couple of like little law of attraction tasks and techniques that you love. It could be some gratitude, one of my favorite things to do in the morning. Gratitude is always the best attitude and creates more reasons to be grateful. So gratitude is a great way to get started with the law of attraction, start shifting your mindset, and start seeing that abundance in action as well. Maybe you want to try some meditation. Maybe you want to do some scripting or journaling. So there's loads of different tools and techniques out there. And obviously you do have to start somewhere to find what your manifesting superpower is. I have a video on that, which can help if you want to identify what your superpower is, because there are hundreds of tools out there and not everything is going to suit everybody. God, I hate visualization. It is the most boring thing to me in the world, yet people swear by it.
Yeah.
So, same as writing, I could write and script all day long. Some people hate that. So it's finding what works for you. And obviously you do have to field test a little bit and see what works for you, like what physically gets you those results as well. So it's not about doing all of the tools and all of the practices and overwhelming yourself and constantly asking, because a lot of the tools and practices people do on a daily basis get them stuck in that asking stage of ask, when actually you only need to ask once. The universe hears you, it knows what you want. It's actually then moving it through those next stages with, practices and tools that get you through those next steps as well. So I think top tips would be like, make sure you're working through those 5 steps. Don't stay stuck in that asking stage. Please don't overwhelm yourself. It's got to feel fun. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. And find your manifesting superpower and see what works for you.
I love it. I love it. Easy, simple, digestible. And we'll make sure that everyone has access to your work so that they can come in and start using the tools that you have to offer. So where can everyone find you?
Yeah, no, thank you. So you can find me at emmamumford.co.uk and on pretty much every social media platform. I'm most active on Instagram at I am Emma Mumford.
Perfect. And we'll make sure all that's linked in the show notes too, so that everyone can just click through, follow you. I love your content. I'm so glad we got to do this today. Thank you for doing what you are. It's so needed in the world. And I feel like we'll have to reconnect for a round 2 in the new year sometime, because so many other light bulbs are just going off in my head. So thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Amber.